November is Financial Literacy Month. A lot of Canadians are being encouraged here to learn how to manage their money and debt, save for the future, and understand their financial rights. But our guest says there's still a basic lack of understanding of the economy, and he reckons it all starts in school. Let's bring in John Goey, portfolio manager and author of Bullshift, How Optimism Bias Threatens Your Finances. It's always great to see you, John. Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Andrew.
Start off with the basic thesis of the book, would you? People are too optimistic, you think, or many of them?
Certainly for the book, optimism bias is a problem because people think optimism bias is where people think bad things are going to happen to other people and not to them. And so they expect other people will be in car crashes, other people will suffer from divorces. When that is translated into financial markets, people think, I won't have to endure a bear market, or I'll be ready and I'll get through it. It'll be easy. And they're not truly prepared for what could happen because they don't honestly imagine that it could happen to them.
Now, one theme you're zeroing in on, I mean, it's one we've heard before, that the schools should teach basic literacy. Well, what is the problem, financial literacy? What is the problem here?
It's sort of like sex 25 or 30 or 40 years ago. Parents are, we assume that parents will be teaching it, but a lot of parents don't want to admit that they don't know what they don't know. And as a result, we have a gap. And one of the things that we've learned in the past couple of generations is that as finance becomes more complex and as credit cards become ubiquitous and as everyone starts going into debt and there are debt levels everywhere, that children are unaware. And I run a podcast. I run a podcast called Bullshift as well. And I asked my guests at the end, if there's one thing that they would change, that they would do differently, what would it be? And I would wager that half of them say, well, we should be doing a better job of teaching personal finance to our kids. And then they go on to say, if I knew when I was a kid what I know now, I wouldn't have made all the mistakes that I've made over the course of my life.
Dennis.
John, Dennis Mitchell, great to see you again. It's been a while. How do we deal with the rise of social media? You yourself pointed out that there are so many people with their own financial advice channels on TikTok, yet are not financial professionals. How do we deal with that?
That's a really tough one because you don't want to go around saying awful things. Obviously, social media is unregulated, and so you have a wide variety of people offering advice, and some of it's good, but a lot of it, I would say a majority of it, is highly questionable, coming from people who are unregulated, unqualified, and as a result, people are getting bad advice, even though they have good intentions. Part of what we need to do is we need to get our kids, away from questionable sources, nebulous sources, and to find information that's more credible, which is one of the reasons why I would advocate putting it into a classroom, because then you could actually have textbooks and have some credibility that would actually give it some rigor.
Give us one or two examples where you feel many people are misinformed about the economy.
Sure. Let's use the example of the difference between a recession and a bear market. A lot of people think those are the same thing. They're very different. The stock market is one thing. The economy is another. That's one example. A lot of people think the Bank of Canada doesn't do that much, and that it's the government of Canada that sets the interest rates. In fact, it's the central bank that does it. So a lot of people don't even know who to look to and who to blame if they want to blame, but also who to lobby if they want to lobby in terms of what should be done differently. And so when we have a basic disconnect, when you don't even understand how things work, how can you make things better if you're actually barking up the wrong tree?
John, you and I are both financial professionals. What can we do to increase financial literacy for Canadians in general?
My view, Dennis, would be that we should be doing more to actually give people tools, give people resources. So I frequently send my clients articles and things that they can read so they can actually become more understanding of the context, so that when I give advice, it's not just, well, we should do this because John says we should do this, but rather we should do this because there's a consensus that rate hikes are going to be a problem, for instance, down the road. And if you've got a mortgage, you're going to have to tighten your belt. Putting things into context is important. And I think financial advisors have a role to play there. And as much as possible, they should actually explain what they're doing and why they're doing it, as opposed to just barging ahead and doing it.
Have you had any feedback from educators or the school system?
I haven't lobbied the school system. It's important to note, Andrew, that education is a provincial jurisdiction. So you would actually have to go to each of the 10 provinces individually, and every province will have its own views as to what to do and how to do it. For instance, some schools, if they were to teach it at all, and many don't, but some jurisdictions would say, well, this belongs in social studies. Others would say, no, we have an economics course in grade 12, we can put it there. Other people will say, well, we have a math course, we can put it into grade 11 math. I don't know that we could actually have enough material for a full-fledged course for an entire high school year, but I think there are lots of places where you can insert it as part of the syllabus, as maybe a section for maybe 3 or 4 weeks in a pre-existing course, which I think would do the world a lot of good. I think our kids would be a lot better if they understood marginal tax rates rather than parallelograms and rhombuses.
Oh.